The yacht Ocean Sparrow set sail from Papeete, a peaceful harbor in French Polynesia. It was early summer in 1992. The sun was bright, the ocean was calm, and the air smelled like warm salt and freedom. On board were 7 people, a mix of crew and wealthy tourists. They were headed on a week-long island cruise across the South Pacific. For them, it was supposed to be a perfect escape, sunbathing, snorkeling, and sipping cocktails on a luxury yacht under open skies. The first day passed beautifully. The water sparkled like glass. Dolphins followed the boat, leaping in and out of the waves. People laughed, took photos, and played music on the deck. The weather reports were perfect. Clear skies, no winds, smooth sailing ahead. No one had the slightest clue what was coming. Night 2. By the evening of the second night, the sea began to change. It started with the air. The temperature dropped suddenly. The wind, once warm and gentle, turned cold and sharp, like tiny knives brushing across the skin. Then the clouds came. Dark clouds, thick and fast, not slowly rolling in like a normal storm, but forming above them in minutes, swirling unnaturally, almost like the sky was boiling. The stars disappeared behind them. The moon was gone. The captain, Ray Thorne, didn't like what he was seeing. He checked the instruments and frowned. The barometer, the device that measures air pressure, dropped rapidly. That only meant one thing: a major storm was forming. But this wasn't just nature doing its thing. The radio crackled. Sarah, the first mate, tried calling the Coast Guard. Static. She switched channels. Still nothing. Then came a sound. A low, humming whisper, deep and strange, through the radio. Not like any signal they had ever heard. No voices, no coded beeps. Just whispering, as if someone, or something, was speaking in a language that didn't belong to this world. Ray ordered everyone inside the cabin. Secure everything. Lock it all down, he shouted. But they were too late. The first lightning strike, without warning, lightning hit the ocean, just meters from the yacht. A blinding flash lit up the night, followed by a thunderclap so loud it shook the walls of the boat. Then, the lights went out. Total darkness. The generator blew. All power died. No lights, no navigation, no radio. Just the sound of the storm building around them, and the endless crashing of waves. Everyone scrambled. Life vests were thrown out. Windows were sealed. Sarah grabbed flares, but they were useless in the heavy wind and rain. Rain came down in thick sheets, slamming the deck like bullets. The boat rocked hard, rising and dropping like a toy in a giant's hand. Waves climbed higher. Water crashed over the sides. Screams echoed in the blackness above them. Lightning kept flashing, but the flashes were strange. Not just white light, but colors. Purple, green, even red. Some claimed they saw shapes in the lightning. Not branches, but forms. Eyes, arms, voices in the wind. As the storm raged, the whispering from the radio began to echo outside the cabin. It didn't come from the speakers anymore. It came from the sea, from the wind. It moved around them, impossible to locate. One of the tourists, Lydia, began crying. She said she could hear her name in the whispers, that someone, or something, was calling to her from the water. Another, Julian, said he saw something in the clouds. Not just lightning, but a blinking eye. Huge, watching them from the sky. Captain Ray kept shouting orders. Tie it down. Stay together. But his voice was almost drowned out by the thunder and screams. Then, a wave taller than the yacht hit them from the side. Everything went white, fade to black. When the boat finally leveled out, 3 people were missing. Only 4 remained, shivering, soaked, and terrified in the flickering glow of emergency lights. The sea had gone calm again, but the storm wasn't over. It had just let them float into something worse, something alive, something watching. The storm didn't build, it exploded. Within seconds of the first lightning strike, the Ocean Sparrow was plunged into total chaos. Every piece of electronics on the yacht shorted out at once. Lights blinked once, then died. The navigation screen sparked, hissed, and cracked down the center. Radios, emergency beacons, radar, all silent. Just static and dead screens. Power was gone. The Ocean Sparrow was officially blind and drifting in open water. Captain Ray Thorne, soaked and squinting against the hammering rain, tried to take control. He shouted over the wind, "Drop the sails. Lock everything down. Get below, if you don't know what you're doing." But the wind wasn't normal. It wasn't coming from one direction. It was swirling violently, pulling from the north, then slamming from the south, then twisting back again. The mast creaked like it was being pulled apart from all sides. It felt like the storm had hands that were grabbing, twisting, testing the strength of the boat. The waves rose, 10 feet, then 20, then 30. The yacht climbed one giant wave like a roller coaster, only to crash down the other side with bone-rattling force. Gear was torn loose. Chairs and tables were tossed like toys. The deck became a war zone of flying equipment, tangled ropes, and terrified screams. People slipped. One man hit his head against the railing and didn't get up. Another was nearly thrown overboard, but Sarah caught his arm just in time, her nails digging into his soaked sleeve as she screamed for help. Inside the main cabin, chaos unfolded. Luggage tumbled across the floors. Glass shattered. A heavy cabinet broke free from its bolts and smashed into a wall. Tourists screamed, not just from fear, but from the pressure. It felt like something was pressing down on the yacht from above, like the entire ocean sky wanted to crush them. Lydia, one of the passengers, small, nervous, and sensitive to things most people ignored, huddled near the porthole, staring outside. Her voice shook as she spoke, almost too quietly to hear. "There's something in the clouds," she whispered. "It's looking at us." At first, no one heard her. Captain Ray was back at the helm, fighting a useless battle against the wind with a wheel that no longer responded. Sarah was helping someone bandage a cut across their arm. Julian was throwing up in the corner, the motion too violent for his stomach to handle. Lydia pressed her face to the glass. Another flash of lightning. But it didn't branch like normal. It didn't flash and vanish. It pulsed, a slow, glowing ripple across the entire sky, illuminating something behind the clouds, round, massive, and moving. Her breath caught in her throat. "It's not lightning," she said louder now, her eyes wide. "It's an eye." Still, no one listened. They were too busy surviving. The next wave slammed into the yacht, with a sound like the world cracking in half. The bow dipped dangerously, low water pouring over the deck. A solar panel ripped clean off and vanished into the dark. "Hold on," Ray yelled. "Tie yourselves down." Someone screamed that the lifeboats had been torn loose. Another tried to grab the flare gun, but it was gone, washed away, or broken beyond use. Panic was setting in, the kind that sinks into your bones when you realize this is more than just a storm outside. The wind began to hum, not whistle hum, like a low, unnatural vibration, rising in pitch. The metal railings buzzed. The air grew electric, crackling, with strange static. Lydia clutched her head and screamed, "It sees us! It sees us!" Julian, still on the floor, looked up, pale as a ghost. "What is she talking about?" But before anyone could answer, the entire sky lit up again. This time, they all saw it. The clouds didn't flash white, they turned green, then violet, and for a single, horrifying second, they parted. Not much, just enough. Enough to show something massive, floating above the clouds, round and glowing, with a pupil the size of a football field. It blinked and was gone. Then silence. The wind dropped. The waves calmed. But it didn't feel like peace. It felt like holding your breath before something worse. Inside the cabin, no one spoke. No one moved. Only the sound of dripping water, the creak of wood, and Lydia whispering over and over, "You saw it. Now it knows you're real." 2:47 a.m. The storm was already beyond anything they'd imagined. But that was the moment it turned deadly. A rogue wave came out of nowhere. No warning, no build-up. Just a sudden black wall rising from the ocean, towering over the Ocean Sparrow, like a tidal god. It crashed into the yacht broadside with a sickening, thunderous roar. The impact knocked everyone off their feet. 2 passengers, Lucia and Mateo, twin siblings from Barcelona, had stepped out on deck minutes earlier, against the crew's warnings, hoping to film the storm. They were laughing, holding on to each other, soaked but fearless. The waves struck, and they were gone, swept clean off the deck and into the sea. Without even a scream, panic exploded. Crew and passengers scrambled to the railings, scanning the violent water for any sign of the twins. Captain Ray shouted for spotlights, forgetting the power was dead. Others yelled their names into the storm, but the wind only threw their voices back in fragments. Nothing surfaced, no screams, no arms waving, no flashes of clothing, just the angry churn of black water, swallowing everything. Malik, the youngest crewman, barely 20, strong swimmer, always eager to help, didn't hesitate. He kicked off his boots, shouted, "I can see one of them," and dove overboard. A few saw him hit the water. Some thought they heard him call out, a sharp, hopeful "I've got." Then silence. No one saw him come up again. Not once. No bubbles. No body. Not even a ripple of color in the sea. Just ... gone. 3 people lost in under 60 seconds. The deck went still. Even with the storm around them, something heavier settled over the remaining passengers. A kind of numb horror. Lydia fell to her knees and clutched the soaked wood with trembling fingers. Ray staggered to the edge, rain washing down his face. He stared out into the chaos, hoping, praying for a hand to reach up from the depths. A cry, a splash. Nothing. The sea was hungry tonight. But then, the thunder began to change. It was subtle at first, just a difference in rhythm. Instead of the sharp, crashing sound of distant lightning, the booms began to stretch, longer, lower, almost like breathing. The sky rumbled with a pulse, a pattern, not random anymore. Julian, the seasick passenger who'd spent most of the night doubled over, suddenly stood straight and still. "Do you hear that?" he asked. His voice was thin. It's not thunder anymore." Sarah nodded slowly. Her eyes were wide. "It's like someone is speaking." That was when they all started to hear it. Beneath the thunder's roar, beneath the hiss of rain and crash of waves, there was something else. A voice, not words, not in any language, but something felt, not heard, a deep, pulsing presence in the storm. Like the ocean itself was thinking, watching, whispering directly into their bones. Lydia clutched her head. "It's inside. It's in my head." Ray tried to shake her. "Focus. You're just in shock." "No," she said, crying now. "It's not mine. It's talking. It's not using words. But it wants something." The thunder rolled. Again, longer this time, almost like a growl. Julian stepped away from the others and stared out into the sea. He didn't blink. "It's looking for something," he said softly. "What do you mean?" Ray asked. Julian turned slowly. His face looked distant, trance-like. "We heard it. So now it hears us back." Then the wind dropped, just for a second. Everything stilled, and in that breath of silence, they all heard the same sound, not imagined, not hallucinated, a voice. Low, echoing from the clouds and the sea at once, not in words, but in meaning. Like a single, massive mind pressing its thoughts into theirs. "You are seen." No one spoke, no one moved. The sea no longer felt like water. It felt like a gate, and something was opening. Captain Ray backed away from the railing and whispered, "This isn't just a storm?" Lydia looked up. It's a test. The storm came roaring back seconds later, louder, harsher, angrier. But the crew had already changed. They were no longer just fighting wind and water. They were being watched, and something ancient and endless was waiting beneath the waves, waiting to see what they would do next. By morning, the storm was gone. No clouds, no lightning, no wind, just stillness, unnatural stillness. The Ocean Sparrow floated adrift in a mirror of sea. The surface stretched to the horizon like glass. Not a ripple, not a swell, no movement of tide. It was as if the ocean itself had stopped. The sky overhead was blank, not overcast, not clear, just colorless. No sun, no clouds, no blue. An endless pale dome of light, with no source. Captain Ray Thorne stood at the helm, jaw clenched, staring at the compass dot. The needle spun slow at first, then faster, round and round, without pause. A compass without a north. Beside him, First Mate Clara ran diagnostics on the backup nav system. Still nothing. Fried circuits, burnt boards, every GPS, radar, and transponder dead, as if the storm hadn't just destroyed electronics, but erased them. Below deck, the remaining passengers gathered in silence. They didn't speak much, not because they didn't want to, but because every word felt loud in the stillness. Every breath, every creak of the yacht's hull, even the smallest whisper seemed to echo across the motionless sea. Julian, normally the nervous one, was the first to break the quiet. He leaned over the railing, squinting down into the flat water den. In a voice not his own, he said, "The sea is watching." His words carried. Everyone froze. Ray turned sharply. "What did you say?" Julian blinked, confused. I didn't mean to say that." Moments later, someone screamed. Clara had spotted something floating off the port side. The crew scrambled to bring it aboard. It was Malek's life vest, still buckled, still sealed, floating upright, like a scarecrow set adrift, but the inside was full of seawater, heavy, saturated, as if the vest had been dragged down for hours and filled from the inside. But no body remained. No blood, no tears, just ... water, and a single dark handprint on the back of the vest. Not Malek's. Too large, too long. Lydia dropped to her knees, rocking gently. Her eyes stared at something none of them could see. She began to whisper in a tongue no one recognized. The words were soft but urgent, repetitive, like a prayer or a warning. Julian asked, "What language is that?" No one answered. Even Lydia didn't seem to know she was speaking. Ray ordered all rations, counted. Clara opened the stores and froze, half empty. But that wasn't possible. They had packed for a week. The crew had checked supplies the day before. Nothing was taken. No one had eaten. Food was just missing. Even bottled water was leaking, not cracked, not opened, but drained. As if something had sucked the contents out through the sealed plastic. Someone whispered, "We're not alone." Panic began to rise. People demanded answers. Passengers shouted over one another. Some cried, some stared into space. Lydia's chanting grew louder. Ray shouted for quiet, but his voice cracked. Even he was beginning to fray, because none of this made sense. Not the missing food, not the empty sky, not the compass that spun without end, not Malek's vest, not Lydia's foreign prayers, and certainly not the silence. No birds, no wind, no hum of insects, not even the sound of distant waves, just the still, heavy weight of the watching sea. At noon, the sun still hadn't risen. It was bright, yes, but there was no sun in the sky. Just that flat, glowing dome above, directionless, unnatural. Julian approached Ray. "There's no horizon anymore," he whispered. Ray frowned. Julian pointed, and he was right. The sea no longer curved. It stretched flat in every direction, edge to edge like they were trapped inside a bowl made of light and water. The world beyond had ceased to exist. They were somewhere else. Ray gripped the rails until his knuckles turned white. He whispered to himself, "This isn't the ocean. Not anymore." And deep below, something moved. Something large. Something aware. Not rising yet, but listening. That night, something strange happened. Music, soft, wordless. It came from beneath the water. Those who listened began dreaming the same thing. A sunken city, glowing blue, calling them. Beckoning, Lydia drew symbols in chalk on the deck, compulsively. Eyes rolled back. Julian walked to the edge of the yacht and calmly stepped off. No splash. Just gone. The hull creaked under unseen pressure. Ray and Sarah, the ship's engineer, inspected the lower chambers and found salt crystals forming in impossible places, as if the sea had evaporated inside. Then the engines rumbled back to life on their own. No one had touched the controls. The ship turned, autopilot activated, but they hadn't input coordinates. It was heading toward something. Sophie, the navigator, realized the yacht was drawing an invisible path, a spiral pattern that matched ancient Polynesian glyphs carved into volcanic stone back on shore. "This isn't just a storm," she said. It was a lure. They discovered Lydia had drawn the same spiral without ever seeing it. And now, the sea was glowing. The glow intensified beneath them, and the sea opened. Not like a sinkhole, like a doorway. The yacht hovered above a massive chasm. Beneath them was a structure, black, pulsing, alien. The water around them began to rise unnaturally, not waves, a slow lifting wall, and then the voices came back. Only now, they were inside their minds. Chapter 9. The last hour remade. The call. They would overload the backup generator and detonate the fuel tanks to collapse the trench below them. "It wants to rise," he said. "We don't let it." Lydia begged them not to. "It's not evil. It's waking," Sophie whispered. "Then let it sleep." They set the charges. The explosion shattered the hull. Only 2 survivors made it to the emergency raft, Sophie and Ray. The sea swallowed the trench, the yacht, and everything else. Hours passed. A Coast Guard plane finally spotted them. Sophie, sunburnt and shaking, pointed to the water one last time. Below the surface, for a fraction of a second, an eye blinked.